Alright, so memorization is a skill that can be learnt, practiced, and perfected over time. The more you practice it and integrate it into your study routine, the faster and better you'll become at it. Okay, so I think the main thing to be aware of is that memorization is an integral part of our academic lives. Whether we're studying politics, law, maths, or biology, there'll always be some form of memorization involved. And when I thought of making this video, it occurred to me that although memorization exists in those different fields, the type of memorization is different for each subject. Generally speaking, I think that there are two forms of memorization. The first category, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, is called rote learning. It's what we use to memorize the alphabet, our multiplication tables, and the months of the year, for example. The second category is what I want to call associative learning, where we have to understand and make sense of what's being presented to us in a textbook or in our lecture slides. It's all about making connections to what we already know, which is essentially what forms the basis of how we, as humans, make sense of the world around us. So I just want to touch on rote learning briefly before I move on to associative learning. The term rote learning is associated with repetition, where we repeat something over and over again until it sticks in our minds. Now, some of the use cases of rote learning can be when we're trying to memorize dates in history class, elements of the periodic table in chemistry, or different formulae in maths and physics. So basically, it's used for facts and numbers. In a way, rote learning can also be classified as associative learning, because for us to recall the information, we need to associate words with each other. A simple example could be memorizing capital cities. Now, if we're asked to recall the capital city of England, in our minds, we're making the connection between the words England and London. So in theory, rote learning involves association, but the key difference is in visualization, which takes us onto associative learning. Now, visualization is what I think makes associative learning longer lasting. The act of linking words with images consolidates whatever it is that you're trying to memorize better, because we do this every day without realizing it. When we're talking to one another, we're picturing what the other person is saying to make sense of their message. Another example is when we read. We associate words with images that help us piece together the setting that the author has in mind. It might not be perfect. What the protagonist looks like and the author's mind is unlikely to be the same as what we picture it to be, but it doesn't have to be, because the beauty of associative learning is that we only have to get the gist of something for us to understand its meaning. Obviously, active recall plays an important part in making this stick in the long term. Now, going back to rote learning, if we take a look at our multiplication tables, it's impossible for us to associate an image with a number. We could have a picture of the number in our mind, but the problem here is that we would have to know what the number is in the first place. But if we take a simple word like danger, all sorts of images form in our minds. Things like violence, injury, death, weapons, a car crash, and the list goes on. So you might ask, well, how do we use associative learning? And I think the main use cases are when we're trying to learn the structure of things, like anatomy, for example, where we can link words with images of body parts, and also when we're trying to learn a process where we can form a mental model of the chronological order in which things happen. Because we as humans like seeing sequences and patterns, and when we can associate steps, like in a recipe, to certain images, and visualize the whole process happening in our minds, it becomes easier to learn the information and to retain it not only for the exams, but also for when we're out there, contributing to society and making the world a better place. So both forms of memorization, rote learning and associative learning, should have their place in our study routine. There are always instances where one works better than the other, so please have them in your arsenal of weapons when you're studying, along with active recall, which I've made a video on. So if you have the time, please go check that out. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more content like this, and I'll talk to you all next time.